We did have a coffee, almost all of us, minus Paul, but thank you very much for joining us. And we have discussed, it was actually a very lively discussion. If we are able to repeat it here, we'd be champions today. What we want to discuss, I mean, you've seen the title, the digital infrastructure race. Can the region compete for the next wave of AI and data investment? What we have discussed down there is that, well, the race for artificial intelligence and data infrastructure is reshaping global economic geography. Data centers been mentioned the whole day, will be mentioned tomorrow as well. Cloud capacity, edge computing networks, but then the talent, also important. And I think we're going to hear in this panel a lot about the governance frameworks that support them. They're not simply technological assets. Our understanding is that they are determinants of where AI-driven growth will concentrate. This region sits at a crossroads in many respects. We all know that. It's no novice. It has genuine assets, and I'll list some. Scientific research capability, engineering talent, and early-stage innovation ecosystems that are attracting international attention, but it also faces some real constraints. And it is a limited domestic capital. Maybe it's not. We're going to learn in this panel. Fragmented markets, digital infrastructure gaps that make large-scale AI investment difficult to absorb. Who do we have in a panel? Well, we have a GovTech leader, a regional investment network, a globally recognized applied AI research institute, I'm looking at Vesna, a clean energy infrastructure pioneer, and a regional cybersecurity leader. So a combination of people who have done something and in this field that we have high esteem for. There are two big questions I'm going to ask, and I hope that later when we discuss are going to eventually be answered. What would it take for this region to become a competitive destination for the next wave of AI and data investment, and who is already building these foundations? The second big question that I keep in mind is where is capital actually moving? What is blocking it, if anything? What would change the calculus? So these are the two big things that I hope might be discussed or answered in this conversation. I'll like to start with you, Manuel. And because FreeBalance has worked with governments in more than 30 countries, and mainly on public financial management. And you were clear in our meeting, this is where I come from. This is what I think is super important. And I'd actually like to ask you, if a government in this region wants to execute this dual transition seriously, how must it approach to public financial management? How to absorb and how to deploy that capital effectively in this field? Please.
Yeah, thank you. Pleasure to be here. I think at scale, the constraint is not ambition, but it's execution.
Uh-huh.
And majority of the governments think about public financial measurement as a control function, and you should look at it as strategic infrastructure. What that means you need to align policy, planning, budgeting, procurement, and the execution, right? So it means that you need to have a single version of the truth in a government. You need to have a system of record. And that system of record, that's what manages and controls the finances of a country. We can talk about AI, we can talk about energy, agriculture, health.
What do you mean by a system of record? What
Sorry?
do you mean? What are you referring at when saying a system of record?
Well, the difference between government and private sector, I'm going to explain to you in 2 seconds. Right? In the private sector, you think about P&L, profit and loss. Your objective is to grow, get great revenues, and minimize your costs and improve your returns. In government, budget is law. So you need to really budget well. You can't overspend because you're breaking the law. And if you underspend, then you didn't do a favor to your country. You reserve capital in different areas of society that were required for you to execute as a government. And therefore, you should execute exactly against each one of those areas. So in order to be able to do this, you need to have a system of record. The heart of a public financial management system is in government what we call a chart of accounts. Chart of accounts is definition like a way that the government going to report and account to itself and to its citizens. So in the chart of accounts is the heart of the system of record. So that's a single system that includes all the areas. One of the main problems of this region, I can tell you right now, is that most of the countries do not have that system of record. They have fragmented systems, or they have systems that they use from the private sector that they try to adopt to government. And I just explained to you the differences between government and private sector, and so therefore you can see that is not very successful. In order for this region to be successful in innovation, in energy, in any of the things we talked about during our coffee chat before we came here, you need to make sure that you created an infrastructure, a backbone of government that allows you to govern with transparency, with accountability, and that you create an environment where capital can be invested and the investors understand that is a secure environment to invest. Not only from the private sector, direct foreign investments, all different types of partnerships that you receive. This region has received a lot of capital from the EU, and to be accountable and transparent and to be able to arrive to its goal with the EU, I think a lot of work needs to be done.
Well, I think we're going to get back to one of the messages you have just shared with us, and it is a need for a government to be ready for what is coming and to prepare its own infrastructure. But now I'd like to turn to Paul Lalovich. You spent more than 2 decades helping, well, I'm going to remind you, helping organizations in nuclear power, utilities, oil and gas, and ICT sectors to execute complex transformations across different emerging markets. So this region is attempting something similar at a systematic level, trying to align business objectives, organization capability, and investment strategies simultaneously. So a question for you, where do most organizations in this region fail in that alignment, and what does a successful digital transformation actually look like when it is executed well?
It's a very pointed question. Thank you so much. So just a bit of a context. I'm a lifelong management consultant. I've been working on 3 continents, North America, Europe, and more recently Asia, with accent on the Middle East. So I have been fortunate to work with some of the largest transformational projects, likes of Do Telecom, which was basically a second incubant in Emirates telecom market, Emirates Nuclear Energy Corporation, Sadara, which was a petrochemical juggernaut. Ultimately, without the design and effort, only 2 things occur by nature, which is, friction and chaos. Mm-hmm. So ultimately, what my personal point of view on this is, as a society, we really need to put a bit more effort into architecture and design of our future state. And I think for one or another reason, this region historically has not been known for its foresight and long-term planning. More often than not, it was foreign powers that were charting our destiny, and rarely we felt that as a people, we're in control of our future. So I think it's more philosophical. If you ask me, what's lacking here is that level of confidence that we are in charge of our own destiny. So I don't want to sound like, kind of like too rhetorical, but that's really what's for me personally very frustrating when I see all these emerging countries, that.
What do you mean by emerging countries?
Like everybody basically, like, now thinks they're an empire, So if you look left, right, and center, you have countries that are much younger than my, house in Novi Sad, and they think, they can have like, this instant history and capability to muscle in others. So what I'm trying to say here, I think with the legacy, with the capacity, with the human capital, and the history that we have everything that it takes to build the future that's really going to be encompassing not only this region, but much broader. If you look at the successful people from this region, we are really amazing one-man armies. Any country that you look at, like you go to Ecuador, you go to Guatemala, you will find somebody from the region that's well known in their area of the expertise. So my question is, like, how come we can't be successful at home? So what it really takes, I guess, like, is really confidence that we can be in charge of our future and destiny. And that's what's going to change the paradigm. Like, once we start thinking long term and we start projecting, this is really going to give us a more strategic perspective of what needs to be done, and we'll avoid that, scenario where somebody else comes and tells us what to do. Like, for the longest period of time, like, it's like other people coming to this place and telling you, oh, you should do this, you should do that. Listen, we've been around for thousands of years. I guess, like, we do one or two things right to survive and thrive. And we have outlived, like, many empires. So I think future is bright.
Thank you. I like this level of optimism, and I join you in this respect. Actually, you mentioned something I'm going to get back to Ravik, but not immediately, perhaps in the second round. Ravik Mima from the Keiretsu forum. A forum is operating across the region, connecting early stage startups with money. Manuel was speaking about the money and what the state should do while managing public financing. What you've been dealing with, the AI startups that tend to succeed globally are often solving problems that are specific enough to be real, but broad enough to scale. So my question for you, if we look into the region, is what kinds of AI problems are both genuinely underserved and commercially viable? And are founders here finding them, seeing them, understanding them, or are they chasing the same ideas everyone else?
Actually, that's a very important question, especially for the region when it comes to what's happening at the moment. I mean, I think we had quite a candid discussion a little bit before.
Pity they were not there.
And excuse me?
Pity the audience was not listening.
Well,
to
I'll
our
break it
live
down.
debate.
Then I'll break it down to you very, very. Since you just allowed me with this
Please.
To let you in what actually Goran was saying. Very interestingly so, US and China in the middle, this was a discussion. If these are two giants in the infrastructure, the hyperscale and what we're trying to do in AI infrastructure, what's left there for us? There was a big question for us. And I think the logic is actually quite right when it comes to if we want to come down with a new AWS and Amazon or whatever, that is correct. We should not replicate that. I'm a big fan of what Mario Draghi said in 2024, and the guy said we should not go for that hyperscale. That is not our comparative advantage. That would cost us a couple of $100 billion that would go completely in the wrong direction. But what we should do instead is actually focus on what's local, what Europe doesn't have that can actually come from here, and what Europe cannot build that can be built from here. And it very much looks like something in the realm of a couple of things. First thing is that turns out we have quite a large number of critical, very rare earth raw materials, right? So if we would have some AI going into that direction with some applied sort of a research level artificial intelligence going into that, definitely that would be very, very interesting. And we were talking a little bit before with Vesna, and I was saying how at Keiretsu Forum, we are very interested in the job that they're doing, this niche intersection between research at high academic level mixed with concrete interactions when it comes to biotech. And agri-tech is something that definitely we should look at in this region. Same thing with what's happening with GovTech. I mean, in some of the countries of the Western Balkans, we're going through a digitalization process that is probably second only to what has happened, I think, in Estonia. So generally, so this is very specific, and I think it's very correct. Also, the discussion that we were having again a little bit before. I'm breaking it. I didn't ask an okay if we could go into it.
Go for it.
But the issue is that it's actually true. As a matter of fact, so to involve also a little bit the audience maybe. It is that the large language models that we have right now, there are large language models made in English. Guess what? This region does not speak English, and it speaks quite some other languages, in which, if the specificity of those languages and those models is not going in the right direction, then that information that is going to be in there is going to be useless to use, right? So we should go delve a little bit into that, and no one in Silicon Valley is going to go do that, right? It's going to be having to come from here. So I think in that direction, that sort of verticals, not horizontals, which are very specific, are what we should focus. And then we have someone very specifically doing punching above their weight when it comes to cybersecurity. That is definitely one of those niches and one of those clusters that, if structured well and defragmented, and this is also what Mario Draghi is completely right about.
Next time we are going to invite you to be a moderator, because you've given already a line to Vesna. You've given a great line also to Igor. So I need to intervene, because I think we should give them a room to follow on what you've just said.
He's
Fantastic.
worried about his job.
Always glad to be of service.
No, Vesna just reminded me about my Napoleon complex, that I want to be big, big, big. And she said, no, what I do is something very, very specific. So basically, BioSense has turned agricultural data, satellite analytics, soil analysis, machine learning into something a farmer can actually use. Therefore, my question for you is a simple one. What does applied artificial intelligence look like when the deployment environment is a field in Vojvodina or Anica?
Yes, thank you, Goran, for this question. It goes without saying, and we've known this for years, and farmers knew this for years now, that with AI they can do so much better than without it. So we help farmers and companies optimize the entire process, starting from the selection of seeds and varieties they will use, to where to plant what, to minimize the risks, to minimize use of fertilizers, to maximize profits, etc. But agriculture, when it comes to AI, is actually a very interesting example, because it can show us how difficult it is to build an AI infrastructure that will suit the needs. Okay, so first of all,
Tailor-made.
Right. So first of all, to work in agriculture using AI, you need big data. You need huge data. You need 10 or 20 years of data. Okay. Then the data is heterogeneous. It's different data coming from satellites, from sensors, from drones, from cameras, from meteor stations. It's all different types of data, and it is far from simple to just take this data and put it into AI model and get your results out. And then when you think about AI infrastructures, and that is the topic of this panel, and I would like to focus on that. For example, there is a big data center in Serbia, in Kragujevac. And the idea when the center was built is that, it's open for everybody to use, and now research institutes and startups will come in and use it, just send their data over internet, start some procedures, models that will generate the results and get the results back. But in reality, it does not work. So for me, first of all, I need to upload 10 years of satellite data. Those are terabytes and terabytes, and there is no internet connection ever, that will allow me to upload 10 years of satellite data from Novi Sad to data center in Kragujevec. Then I talked already about heterogeneous data. So typically, general purpose made data centers will accept only very limited types of data, for example, from your smartphone camera, RGB photos, or mobile phone data. When it comes to satellite imaging, hyperspectral, so it's just not possible to put it inside the model. So you need to have at home a very large expertise on how to pre-process this data so you can actually, put it in an AI model. And then if you manage to overcome these two obstacles, it will take forever. No matter how big the GPU capacity is at the data center, it will take forever for your algorithms to run unless you can optimize it, unless you can optimize the hardware according to your specific needs. And general purpose data centers do not do that. They cannot do that. No? So,
if I'm not wrong, we are a group of, at least minus you, Paul, because you were not with us, but others in this panel are enemies, minus me as well, enemies to a big hyperscalers. You're talking about tailor-made data centers.
Because big is not smart.
Okay.
I mean, we can never achieve computing power of Amazon or Google or whatever there is in US or in China.
They may come.
So it is, for me, it is a wrong way to compete. You're trying to run a race that you lost 10 years ago. Rather, I would focus on smart solutions, on things that we as a region have to offer that are not existing elsewhere.
Well, thank you. So, Igor,
Yep.
she just mentioned something, and Ravik as well, thank you. So, is then cybersecurity a field where we can be more specialized and competitive? Everyone, while talking about cybersecurity, speaking about Israeli companies, Mossad, Where are we? So, question for you, what are the risks at the moment that they're constantly underestimated? And can we, the region, bring something to the table in this area?
Definitely, I think that we can. Just short introduction to the PULSEC as a private company. We are in the region for many years. We have operation in Serbia, in Bosnia, in Austria, in Switzerland, in Angola. So we're just expanding the market so we can expand our businesses. So we started as a system integrator. We are providing services. We have largest security operations center within the region, and we know that expertise that you can offer to globally and to EU is something that the company and the governments can share. We cannot compete with huge players, but we can offer the expertise, because we know that it's lack of expertise within the world. For example, in the cybersecurity, it is with the jobs report that I read, the first, of course, is AI, and the second one is cybersecurity. So I think it's a huge opportunity for the region to invest in those kind of services. And about the underestimated part that you asked, I think that is a huge gap, because we have digitalization that is growing, and AI is growing even faster. But cybersecurity usually is tracking like the product. You cannot buy cybersecurity as a product. You need to really work 24/7. And speaking about the AIs, all the models that you're using, the security perspective of the AI is really low. It's the maximum security that you can achieve, I think, is Anthropic, it's 40%. So you need to be aware how you can deal with the AI. So, and the gap is that cybersecurity is lag behind that's digitalization part and AI part. So,
as you have mentioned, need to be aware. I'm getting back with the same line to Manuel.
okay.
In this region, what is the biggest gap between what governments currently understand about funding digital infrastructure and what they need to understand to actually create the right conditions. That's need to be aware when it comes to public money and financing.
Just to qualify, every time I speak like if I'm government. I'm a private sector company
are?
that works with government. We've been doing that for 42 years, but so I see countries from the government inside out. So my answers are if I am like someone in government. Make sense?
I was, so
Okay. So I think the biggest gap in governments, they think about funding the digital infrastructure is about money.
okay,
But it's not about money, it's about execution.
okay.
It's about the ability to create an environment where you can apply the capital. And to create, excuse me, the rules, the regulations that you can apply that capital in accordance with you from a nation point of view have decided that you want to try to achieve, right? And so that means that you have to support innovative ways of operating as a government. You have to have a procurement that supports innovation, as an example, right? Governments are very rigid the way that they buy, right? And so if they are that rigid the way they buy AI today, by the time they finish creating the bid for a procurement, that technology is already gone. So we need to have a procurement that supports innovation. We need to have a budgeting system that supports multi-years, that understands these long-term projects. We're talking about building energy capacity and things like that. So multi-year transformation. And we need to ensure there is transparency and there is interoperability between the different areas. So there is a lot of money available, believe it or not. Even a lot of it is interesting.
I believe it.
And but in order to do that, you need to create an environment that investors, they feel comfortable that their money is going to the right place, right? So I think that's the most critical thing.
Yeah.
But I would like to just piggyback in what the panel has said here so far. I think that even bigger countries, for example, one of our customers is the government of the Philippines, right? And even in the time of the cloud, you know, there's this question of sovereignty. Okay, where is my data? Like on the old days, is where's my gold reserves, right? First they were in country, then they went to Fort Knox. And so AWS, well, we created a cloud just for Philippines.
Yeah.
No other data is available just within the Philippines. I think this concept, which are already outdated, is very important to create this sovereignty for AI.
You're getting back to tailor-made.
Yeah, so it's called, I call it the SLMs. And then, which is, you know, that you have your data in the languages that, you know, that you operate in, with a culture, with understanding of what is happening historically, and to be able to create a regulated environment where government is going to create an environment that money can be spent, people can invest in, because they have confidence, right?
Yeah.
And never allow again the private sector to dictate how citizens have to use data.
As you
And how do we have
mentioned,
to operate?
citizens, thank you. I'd like to invite Paul to comment on citizens and the brain drain. So we do live in an environment in which people are leaving the region. But then again, my question is, what is the most important organizational condition that needs to be in place before infrastructure in AI investment can actually be compound? While we are losing people, but we do still have real brain around.
So yeah, one of the key success factors in digital transformation is obviously going to be alignment of the organizational capabilities and organizational structures in order to facilitate the best outcomes when it comes to this organizational change driven by the AI. In other words, you're not going to operate in a traditional sense of the word where you are used to certain types of processes now with the new technology. So what I'm trying to say here, very few organizations have that level of foresight, how they need to transform and change ways of doing things when they're adopting the technology. So one thing that we as a consultancy are advocating is that organizational transformation starts with organizational change, and this is driven by the organizational culture. So the adoption has to be driven from the top down, where people are going to understand that the way of doing things is going to change, and to remove the change resistance that ultimately dooms these massive technology investments.
Thank you, Ravik. I'd like to get back to something you mentioned in your first intervention related to the role of diaspora. There was a mentioning. I'd also like to hear from you about the, your position is, it's not about money, there is money, but what about the mechanisms to bring it in? Tell us.
Exactly so. So I don't really think that we have a capital problem. I think that we have a problem which is a capital mechanism problem.
Okay.
That is what we need to accept. I think because consider this. So across the Western Balkans, as a matter of fact, private savings sitting in deposit accounts which are just sitting there and being basically eaten by inflation. That's in the billions of euros, and that's quite. If you compare it to the percentage of GDP, it might make actually a quite big chunk of that GDP actually just sitting there, right? So as a matter of fact, founders nowadays, especially early stage founders, while these billions are sitting there, they need to take a trip to London or Berlin to get funded for, I don't know, just a first 200, 300K euro ticket. Why should they, right? So definitely the money is there. It's the mechanism and the right incentives to put in place to actually get this, to get this money to fund this talent that otherwise will leave the region. And you were talking rightly so about diaspora. So this is definitely, I call it the VC that we don't have. So if we don't need venture capital, we have diaspora. We have some of the diaspora in the Western Balkans, in each of these countries, which definitely by any measure is the most willing to actually invest back. It's just that that money has been just going into promises of, I don't know, some kind of real estate investment that yielded or never yielded any investment. So at the end of the day, it's a question of fragmentation. So, and again, I'm citing Mario Draghi here because he was also right about that. So it's a matter of regional fragmentation and mechanisms that we have, that if we put the right incentives in place, that is, again, something that we need to work on, and that is the layer that we need to focus on.
Vesna, we've mentioned there is money, there is need for a government to be ready to properly execute it. What about the environment? Getting back to your specialty, and you explained. So tell us 2 or 3 environmental conditions that the region must most urgently needs to get right.
But if we are talking about SMEs and startups in the field of AI, I would like first to start with something that, you know, it seems very simple. You have an idea, and you add AI tools, and you will have quick results, right? But for your results to be really marketable and successful and make a super company out of that, you really need to have a really, really good idea that is different than what everybody else is having. So coming back to the strengths of the region first, I think that our strengths are still in the fundamental sciences. Like we have amazing mathematicians, biochemists, biophysicists, and where AI is heading today is explainable AI. It's physically informed neural networks. So you are not making generic AI algorithms that will need huge numbers of GPUs. You are making models where all of this science is, threaded inside. So your models will be simpler, they will run faster, they will require less AI infrastructure. And that is where we have, the expertise and the strength of the region. So first of all, I think the ideas, initial ideas where these SMEs, come from and where they're building their business efforts should be rooted in something that's really specific for the region. And then we come to the other side of the medal, other things that are specific to the region, which is not so nice, which is the environment, of course. I was just talking, I'm very glad to have Marko Nikolic here. He's one of our young, bright people working in AI and has a startup also. He told me legislation in terms that, why does Spotify come from Sweden? Because their market in terms of AI is not over-regulated. European, typically, and Serbian, sometimes, as they tell me, is. And finally, the rule of law, let alone AI. You cannot build any kind of business unless you're certain in rule of law and how your institutions will be working. So I think those are the main constraints for the startups.
So mentioning rule of law, we go back to Igor. So basically, a final question for you is the regional ecosystem moving fast enough to build a defensive capability while we are boosting development of AI?
Frankly said, no. But it's not just a region, it's global issue that is not moving fast enough. So definitely we need to keep up, because I think AI is a huge issue for the perspective of Vesna said, we need to specialize AI to accelerate our knowledge, but from the other perspective, attackers using it too. So now attacks are much faster now. We have the issues in the region, we have governance of Montenegro, Albania, EPS, city of Novi Sad, so definitely attacks are here, but it will be even more. So that is, I think, that we really need to invest in expertise, not to compete with the big players. And I think that we are having it. Also, we're investing in public and private cooperation. So we are acquiring really young talents that have expertise. Within our company, we have some academy of ours. So definitely we need to differentiate from you that you just want to be compliant with the NIS2, DORA, and it's fine, because regulators are pushing the companies that they need to regulate, they invest the money, but beside that, we just don't need to have just the check mark about, for example.
Our time's up, but I would like to spare my last minute with you and for you. So imagine that you are asked, what is the one decision or one investment that you would advise us to do that would mostly determine how the region gets where we want to bring it? What?
I'm sorry, I'm going to say rule of law.
Rule of law? Rule
Simple,
of law.
but true.
Others? Execution?
Well,
I
winning
guess so.
means infrastructure is not just built, must be trusted, must be governed.
Now we get back to
It must be
trust
expanded.
is the biggest word, but it's linked with the rule of law of everything. Well, thank you guys. We need to pay respect to the organizers also in a manner that we respect time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.